The next set of our videos on the nervous system is on the peripheral nervous system. I'm still in an airport and it's actually gotten a little bit louder, so I'm hoping to get through this one before it gets too loud. Again, I'd like to remind you the divisions of the nervous system, the central nervous system or CNS and the peripheral nervous system or PNS. We talked about how the peripheral nervous system can be further broken down into somatic, which is voluntary, and autonomic, which is involuntary, and how the autonomic nervous system can be broken down even farther into sympathetic, standing for fight or flight, or parasympathetic, which we call rest and digest. The peripheral nervous system, or PNS, contains all the nervous tissue that is outside of the brain and spinal cord. It connects the brain and spinal cord to the body as well as the environment. It is composed of peripheral nerves, associated ganglia, and sensory receptors. There are two types of nerve fibers within the peripheral nervous system. Afferent nerves that are also called sensory nerves. These conduct impulses from the sensory receptors to the central nervous system. They are found in sensory structures like skin, ear, and also within the eye. Efferent nerves are also called motor nerves. They carry impulses away from the central nervous system to muscles and glands. These originate in the central nervous system and they are divided into somatic, that controls skeletal muscles, and autonomic, that controls smooth muscles and glands. The somatic sensory system has two main functions. The first is to carry signals from the sense organs to the central nervous system where they are interpreted. The sensory somatic system deals with responses that are both conscious and voluntary, and it does that through 6 pairs of cranial nerves and 31 pairs of spinal nerves. The other function of the sensory somatic system is to carry signals from the central nervous system to those muscles and glands in order for them to respond. There are 12 different cranial nerves. The cranial nerves are the ones that originate within the brain. They begin at various locations of the brain, they move underneath it, and then lead to various parts of the head, neck, and trunk. Most cranial nerves contain both sensory and motor axons, but only the nerves for the smell and vision senses have only sensory axons. Spinal nerves are different because they will originate from the spinal cord. They begin at various locations along the spinal cord, then leads to appendages and also the trunk. They are grouped according to their location along the spinal cord. You have cervical nerves, then thoracic nerves, lumbar nerves, sacral nerves, and then coccygeal. There's one pair, I suppose. If you want to just look at a blow up of that a little closer as far as where they correspond to the body, the cranial nerves are up higher, thoracic nerves, lumbar nerves, sacral nerves, and then the one pair of the coccygeal nerve. The cranial nerves largely do head and neck down to the hand. Thoracic nerves are chest muscles and abdominal muscles. Lumbar nerves are for the leg muscles. And then the sacral nerves are for the bowel and also bladder. The autonomic system is the one that operates involuntarily. Without conscious control, it controls the visceral organs through cardiac muscle, smooth muscle, and glands, and it's split into two divisions, sympathetic and parasympathetic. If we were to compare the two, you would see that sympathetic is fight or flight. That means it will prepare the body for an emergency. It uses a neurotransmitter called epinephrine. When the sympathetic nervous system is engaged, your heart rate will rise, your arteries will constrict, pupils will dilate, digestion processes will decrease so that the body can spend more energy in some of these other areas, saliva decreases, and glucose released by the liver is increased. Parasympathetic is kind of the opposite of that, rest and digest. It will return the body to normal after an emergency. It uses a neurotransmitter that's just like a chemical that communicates information within the nervous system, and this one is called acetylcholine. Here you will have slower heart rate, dilation of arteries, constriction of pupils, increased digestion, increased saliva, and storage of glucose by the liver. If we wanted to kind of look a little closer about what happens between parasympathetic and sympathetic, you can. This is just a sort of summary where in parasympathetic the pupils will constrict, while in sympathetic it will dilate. You can skip down a few. Parasympathetic heart rate is slowed, whereas in sympathetic heart rate is increased, and etc. And that will do it for the final part 3 of the nervous system.